Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Drew Hardison, Civil Improvement Project Manager here at Barge. I've had the privilege of working with the students over the past year as a mentor. As you'll see, this is a very exciting potential project here in the community. They have done a great job start to finish, so we feel like they've made tremendous progress.
Yes, and my name is Mary Vavra. I'm a planner landscape architect. I too have been helping mentor the students this past year and just really impressed. You know, we've had site visits and working with the Civic Design Center on the project. It's been really rewarding. And particularly because we have an excellent case example from Birmingham, Alabama. And we're fortunate to have Catherine Withers here. She's a planning manager at Barge, and she's going to talk a little bit about that. Then next we'll turn it over to the Civic Design Center, and then we'll get into the students' presentation. So looking forward to it. With that, I'll turn it over to Catherine.
All right, thanks, Mary. Right, so we just wanted to give you guys more background on why we were so excited about this project, because we have an example that our team just completed a year ago. It is called City Walk Birmingham. It is in downtown Birmingham, Alabama. It is 31 acres, 10 city blocks of new public space comprised of walking trails, amphitheater, skate park. I mean, there's a lot packed into this space. And it all came about because of an interstate replacement bridge project. So it's a federal environmental mitigation. How else do you ever get to create 31 acres of new public space in an existing downtown? It's pretty amazing when you think about that. And you can see, so the big building on the north side, that's the convention center, which was really effectively cut off from the heart of downtown for this project. So here, images of before and after of that project. On the right, you can see the lighter material. So you really get a sense of how big this project was. You can also kind of see that it sits a little bit higher in the air. Here's some images of what it looked like before. It was dark and cramped. A lot of it was fenced off and not accessible. The parts that were used for parking. It really just was not a hospitable place. So a project like this takes a long time from start to finish. So here in 2014, the idea of placemaking came about, and then there was an intensive public engagement process, and then the engineering and design work, and then construction happened at a brisk pace with the goal of opening to be the backdrop for the World Games that were hosted in Birmingham last July, and that did happen. So when you think about, why should you think creatively about putting in new public spaces? It's because as our cities redevelop and become more intense, we need to be intentional about providing space for people to be able to be outside and be welcome. And these places create economic value for communities. They attract high quality businesses that in turn, that delivers high property values. It's a place where everyone in the community can feel welcome and come together. So people are really proud of these places, and designed intentionally, they can provide environmental value. They can mitigate the effects of pollution. So as I mentioned, there was a robust engagement process. That was direct stakeholder contacts. That was going and attending neighborhood meetings, online surveys, and also the big engagement meetings that you see here. That's mainly what Mary and I were involved in. And during those large public meetings, there was intentional effort placed on programming. So what should happen? 31 acres, that's a lot of space to program. And to be relevant, you've really got to have activities that are going to bring people out. So that was all distilled and put into this conceptual master plan, where each block became a room. The bridge piers are about 165 feet apart, so that really helped reinforce that idea of a room. And I'm just going to walk you through some of those rooms. Here you can see placemaking come to life. This is really Birmingham's front lawn. And so the Birmingham Jefferson Convention Complex has really taken the lead and ownership on actively programming this space. And so they are regularly planning events that, that get the community down there. And Also, we wanted to celebrate the place. You know, Birmingham, the city is there because of the region's abundance of coal, iron ore, limestone deposits, right? They're all ingredients in steel. So there's a rust-colored seam path that runs the entire length of the park. That's a spine that pulls it together. Also, the Corten steel is used in wayfinding, signage, the architectural elements throughout the park, and the skate park. So I really love they came out during the public engagement process and really made themselves known that there was a need for a skate park in central Alabama. And so now there's a 58,000 square foot skate park. There's also an 11,000 square foot skating rink. And there's a pump track, and there are elements for beginner skaters as well as the more experienced. There are regional skate competitions that are here. So skaters are out here using this day and night. And it's a destination for the region, and it offers different experiences for children, teenagers, adults, and even dogs, four-legged friends. There's a dog park off this playground, but it really serves that need for the community to have a place to come together, a variety of experiences. So takeaways from this project, we learned that, monumental projects like this don't happen overnight. I mean, in the timeline, 2014 to 15 was when the idea came about, but I think people talked about it, a long time before then. So that it just takes a long time. And public engagement can result in, unexpected outcomes, but that's also really important for ensuring that the community is excited about the project and they are going to come out and use it, right? That we see in the skate park. And spaces are very different from day to night, so you have to think about that. And they also don't achieve full potential unless there is an entity actively programming it and getting people to come out to the space. And it takes a lot to put on events, as the Civic Design Center knows, from the planning to the execution and taking it down. And so you got to plan for continued maintenance and operations budgets so that you can ensure the long-term success and that the space is really staying relevant. So in the interest of time, I think we'll skip questions, but I will be around afterwards to answer any questions. I'm going to turn it over to Joe to talk about the Civic Design Center.
Thank you. So welcome, everybody. I'm Joe Mays with the Civic Design Center. I'm our project manager. And so I'm going to just go into a little bit how this came to light at our organization, this specific site, and then pass it over to the students because they've done a lot of great background research on this. So the Civic Design Center, if you don't know, our mission is to advocate for civic design visions and actionable change in communities to improve the quality of life for all. And so going back to our roots, we've done community engagement is basically the founding of our organization. We had community members who started the Civic Design Center. And that all started with the divide of a proposed highway, which is now Free and Veterans Boulevard, which is just north of the site that we're talking about. So we've been talking about interstates and how they've divided our communities throughout history in a lot of different ways. And how do we kind of heal our communities based on the past infrastructure that has been built. So thinking about our first project was the Plan of Nashville, which was a community vision for downtown Nashville. One of my favorite graphics from that engagement was this kind of, there's the riverfront, there's neighborhoods, and they're all divided by the interstate. The interstate kind of is that dividing line that doesn't allow our communities to kind of interact with each other. So from that process, that started our guiding principles that we still live by today. And they're talking about representation, foundation, preservation, and expansion here in Nashville. So with that, I'll talk about our design center has a lot of different programs, part of them being college students and architecture interns creating visions. And so this right here is a vision for underneath the highway that was created by, I believe, an architecture intern about 6 years ago. So we've been talking about how do we improve this area of Nashville? How do we activate these spaces that are kind of underutilized in our city for a long time. So with that, I'll pass it over to you.
I'm Katie, this is Rachel, Baker, and Alex. We are all Vanderbilt University civil engineering seniors, and we have focused on designing this project this entire semester. So we are excited to share it with you. So author Deborah N. Archer wrote this: America's highways are part of the racial architecture of our country, with barriers both visible and invisible. The question before the country is whether and how we will truly confront those barriers. The project we are proposing today is meant to do just that. Confront the barriers imposed on marginalized communities by the construction of the interstate. In 1956, President Dwight D. Eisenhower passed the Federal Highway Construction Act, which was intended to connect the United States through new methods of interstate travel. However, highways often came to serve in the opposite capacity, building walls between communities and producing a physical realization of segregation. Under the guise of urban renewal, highways effectively destroyed thriving Black communities and separated Black citizens from other economically prosperous and predominantly white areas of the city. Robert Moses, a man heavily involved in the design of the highway system in New York, put it this way: legislation can always be changed, but it's very hard to tear down a bridge once it's up. This quote references bridges that Moses built intentionally low, too low for public buses to travel under, which usually transported minority and poor citizens. This same sentiment can be seen in the design of the interstate highway system. The idea that legislation can always be changed, but it's very hard to tear down an interstate once it's up. Individuals who began to realize that Jim Crow laws were going to be repealed and wanted to ensure they continued used interstate systems to statutorily permanentize segregation. Thus, even once the Civil Rights Act had passed in 1964, legal segregation and exclusion continued. Archer says it this way: ultimately, the nation's highway system contributed to the concentration of race and poverty and created physical, psychological, and economic barriers that persist to this day. In Nashville specifically, I-40 created barriers for many communities and completely bulldozed others. Many communities were affected by the construction of this interstate, but few were more affected than Jefferson Street in North Nashville. Jefferson Street was a thriving community known for its music and full of Black-owned businesses. When I-40 was mapped out, it was placed on top of Jefferson Street, forcing Black-owned businesses out and destroying the community it was known for. This thriving community infused with music and culture gave way to empty and dilapidated streets and buildings, and the only remains of the once vibrant community are the signs such as the one you see here. I-40 didn't just target Black communities in this way, though. There were more subtle ways as well. This can be seen in areas all along the outskirts of I-40, but one of them is the Napier-Suticum community in South Nashville. This was and is a primarily Black community, and I-40 essentially walled it off from the rest of Nashville. This community, born during the period of Jim Crow laws and legal segregation, was forced to remain siloed away from the rest of Nashville, even after the Civil Rights Act was passed and legal segregation ended. The interstate served as both a physical and social barrier to this community and still does to this day. This community is a primary focus for our project. Our site, which we have termed Lafayette Heights, is located just north of that community. And north of Lafayette Heights are some of the highlights of Nashville: Broadway, the Music City Center, the state capitol, Nissan Stadium, even the pedestrian bridge. I-40 essentially cut this community off from some of Nashville's most iconic and economically prosperous areas, which because there was no safe way for pedestrians to cross that barrier, which we will discuss in detail later. Even closer in, you'll see that not only is this a great opportunity to connect communities, but it's also just a great area to bring a new development into. There are many opportunities within walking distance of this site. There are a few apartment complexes, there are Airbnbs, there's gyms and childcare center and children's theater. There's so many opportunities to bring this community together through the creation of the Lafayette Heights part we are proposing. As you can see, our site is located directly northwest of one of the highest density areas in Nashville. This small triangle you see here is primarily composed of the Napier-Suticum community we discussed earlier. The abundance of people in this area would only increase the benefit of having a development in this area. Thousands of people would benefit from connecting these communities in this way. While there are a few parks in the area, there's certainly much opportunity for more. Our community, the Lafayette Heights community, would serve as more park space for the public to take advantage of, and it's within walking distance of a number of existing green areas and parks, as well as future priority areas for new parks. In 2016, Nashville received the Choice Neighborhoods Planning Grant. One of the plans born out of that grant was this, which is a proposed renovation of the Napier-Sudicum community. This new development would have over 2,000 housing units, a church, a public library, a park, plaza, and a hub. This would be a mixed income, mixed use community. If this plan came to fruition, it would only serve to heighten the value of Lafayette Heights Park. It would be an amenity residents could take advantage of, and it would connect the residents to the rest of Nashville. Here you see the general existing conditions on our site. Our site is surrounded by 5 different streets, 2nd and 4th Avenue on its east and west sides, the ramp from I-40 to 4th and 2nd on its north and south sides, and Lafayette Street, which cuts through its center. There are 2 fairly large green grassy areas, both northwest and southeast of our site, as well as a number of existing buildings and parking lots adjacent to those areas. Because our site is an interstate underpass, there are a number of columns throughout the site holding up the bridge. These are shown by the small black boxes on this diagram. Our proposal works around these columns. The dashed gray line represents the interstate boundary, which is a good reference point for how much of our site is covered by the bridge versus uncovered. Here you see the topography of the site. As you can see, the site is relatively flat. It does get steep as it approaches Lafayette Street, but our proposal works on the relatively flat part so that minimal grading would be required before construction. Water flows towards Lafayette Street, which already has the infrastructure needed to contain the water collected. Because our site is covered, the addition of impervious surfaces, as we will be recommending, would minimally impact drainage, and slim to no drainage changes would be required for our proposed design. Here you see the utilities on the site. These were retrieved from Metro Water Services. All the locations are approximate, but as you can see, the only utility that seems to run directly through our site is a 36-inch water main on its west side. For this reason, we've avoided proposing any kind of structure or expensive pavement on that side to ensure easy access to that water main should maintenance be required. There is also a sewer line that runs directly east of our site, and this is the line we would connect to the bathrooms we propose to be on the site. Here you see pictures of the underpass itself. These are the 2 flat areas that I mentioned earlier. They're both flat, open, undeveloped. They're both covered by the interstate. These are the main 2 areas of interest for our proposal. One of the issues with this site is that there's currently no way to travel between the east and west sides of it. Sorry. These pictures show the lack of ramps on the north and south sides of the underpass. There's no room for pedestrians to walk along these ramps, making travel between sites difficult on the ramp level. Here you see pictures from the northwest and northeast intersections, as well as Lafayette Street, where it cuts through the east and west sides of the site. At the 2 intersections, you can see a clear lack of pedestrian infrastructure. There are no crosswalks, there's no pedestrian signals, markings are minimal, and pedestrians are forced to guess when to walk across and never truly have the right of way. And as on the ramp level, you can see that there is also no easy way for pedestrians to cross between sites on Lafayette Street as well, because there is no crosswalk, there is no pedestrian signal, and there is 6 lanes of traffic to go across. Both the connection between these 2 sites and the connection between this site and the surrounding community is dangerous for pedestrians. There is no easy way to access this site as it is right now.
So to build off of these accessibility and safety issues that Katie just introduced, we will begin to look at some of the transportation components of our project. First, we'll analyze the automobile traffic counts in our study area. As you can see, traffic getting off of I-40 is very heavy. These counts range from 5,000 to 9,000 vehicles per day, and this has a direct impact on accessing the site through other modes of transportation. Here we have the automobile traffic counts of roads that run directly through our site. We have 2nd and 4th Avenue South, as well as Lafayette Street. These two images depict the count sites, both on the north and south sides of the project. And we can see that these counts are much higher than those getting off of I-40. It's also important to note that these counts have also increased significantly since 2021, and these were actually updated since we started our project. For example, on the south side of our project on 4th Avenue South, these counts increased from 6,700 vehicles per day to 11,200 vehicles per day, just in this 1 year. And with further research, it was determined that pedestrian and bike counts were not able to be found, proving that vehicles are the prioritized mode in this area. Even with these already high numbers, traffic counts are expected to grow as there are many future projects in the surrounding area that will only be increasing traffic. We have the Napier-Sudacombe proposed project that Katie mentioned, the Wharf Park project, pedestrian bridge improvements, the East Corridor commuter rail upgrades, WeGo secondary transit hub, and I-40's reconstruction and modernization in the next few years. As travel is increasing, it's important that accommodations are made so that travel is not only efficient, but that it is also safe. The pedestrian crash history in the corridor is actually very alarming, and its severity supports the claims of needed improvements to pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. These blue dots around the site represent fatal crashes that have happened from 2019 to 2022. So to accommodate future development and to progress with Nashville's Vision Zero action plan, these design considerations must be made to encourage the use of safe multimodal travel. And now we'll look at these crashes, the crash history in conjunction with the traffic data. As you can see, many of these crashes occur along Lafayette, which experiences high traffic counts of 15,000 plus vehicles per day. Now we'll look at other modes of transportation in the area. Transit is available through our site, and there are many routes. We have frequent local and express services that run directly through our site. There are not stops within our site, but there are some within the surrounding area. Additionally, looking at pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, there is currently a lack of it within the site, but there is some surrounding our site. But if you look at what's currently there, we are left with a very disconnected system that hinders mobility. It's important to note also that these light blue lines are only future bikeway projects, and these haven't been fully completed yet. So based on these existing conditions, we are left with many transportation barriers. These include limited pedestrian accessibility, a lack of protected bikeways, high pedestrian crash incidents, and inadequate pedestrian facilities due to high volumes, narrow sidewalks, zero crosswalks, and zero pedestrian signals. Looking at this figure, you can see that there are only sidewalks in the site. There are no crosswalks, no pedestrian signals at any of these 4 intersections. It's also important to note that this lack of infrastructure is not preventing anyone from crossing these streets here. At every site visit we've had, there have been other people crossing these streets where these sidewalks should be. It's led to very unsafe conditions, both for pedestrians and drivers, and it's very easily solved. So in order to reclaim the space and prepare for the conceptual design, these barriers must be accounted for. With that being said, here is a high-level overview with our transportation improvements. These solutions will combat the barriers presented in the previous slide. We will add protected bikeways, add bus stops in the site, add crosswalks at intersections, add pedestrian signals, improve sidewalks in the site, and implement Lafayette's roadway reconfiguration. And looking at opportunities to enhance WeGo routes within our site, we will add 2 stops at these 2 green dots, one on 2nd Avenue South and one on 4th Avenue South. This will increase mobility throughout the corridor, and it will provide a direct stop to our site for those visiting. There are also many bikeway and greenway opportunities for our site. Looking at these yellow shaded regions, these are opportunity areas because of the future projects that will be coming to the site, which will have the potential to increase bike use in the area. Further bikeway development also allows for a well-connected system. These improvements will be added to complement what's currently there, as well as the proposed projects. This green line represents where bike lanes will be added. On Lafayette Street, we have a protected bike lane added, and on Ash Street, we have a regular painted bike lane that will tie into the recently completed bike lane on 3rd Avenue South. And with these enhancements on Lafayette and Ash Street, these communities separated by I-40 will be better connected. Here we have before and after conditions on the 4th Avenue South intersections. Before, you can see that there are only sidewalks within the site. After, a well-marked, well-connected system is created that allows all pedestrians to move safely through these intersections. Crosswalks, tactile paving, and protected signals will be added for pedestrians, as well as a bus stop, which is added at that purple dot, and this allows direct access to the site. 2nd Avenue South intersection improvements mirror those implemented on 4th Avenue South. The crosswalks, pedestrian signals, and tactile paving and bus stop will be added here as well. And lastly, looking at the Lafayette Street improvements, to add the protected bike lanes, Lafayette must undergo a roadway reconfiguration. These 3 10-foot lanes in each direction will go down to 2 10-foot lanes with 2 buffered bike lanes. These buffered bike lanes will enhance safety for both cyclists and drivers and will encourage the use of other modes in this area. This will increase mobility and provide a better experience for all travelers. Specifically looking at these design additions, a sign stop will be used for the transit and one-way separated bike lanes will be used on Lafayette. This bus stop will be placed under the interstate, which is covered, or it'll be placed under the interstate. So it was determined that a covered stop would not be necessary. There will additionally be seating within our site. And there's limited space on the sidewalk. So we just decided to go with a sign stop. For the buffered bike lane, a 7-foot minimum distance is needed for the lane, and a 3-foot buffer is needed to separate vehicles and the bike lane. This fits perfectly as the current road lane widths are approximately 10 feet. Beautification efforts could also be implemented through raised concrete or planters in that buffer zone. So overall, although we are left with many transportation barriers, these improvements can lead to a very exciting solution. And with the suggested improvements, a well-connected, safe transportation system is created for the Lafayette Heights community.
So now it's time to get into the heart of what we are proposing today, which is the Lafayette Heights Park. The park has 2 sections dissected diagonally by Lafayette Street, which we have dubbed the west and the east portions of the park. As you can see, surrounding the park are the pedestrian improvements, which will allow for better access for people on both sides of the freeway to come to the park. Additionally, just to make clear, the freeway is passing over the park. You can see on the left and right portions of this photo, the freeway has been cut out to show the park under the freeway. On the west portion of the park, we have several different aspects for community members to come and enjoy time at the park. At the very left of the west portion of the park is a pedestrian and parking plaza, which can be converted between the two types. We are hoping that food trucks would come to this plaza park and allow people to come and enjoy a meal at lunchtime or at dinner time. The plaza can also be closed off to allow for more pedestrian access or more tables to be brought in for people to enjoy, or for potentially festivals or some sort of community events to occur in the space. Additionally, there will be grassy areas, turf and landscaping in the other portions of the west part of the Lafayette Heights Park, as well as tables and benches for people to enjoy, have meetings, have a meal, and ultimately come to the park. Additionally, because Lafayette Street is diagonally crossing a 6-lane street, quite dangerous. If you go there right now, it's almost like playing chicken when you're crossing the street with how many cars there are. We've proposed a pedestrian bridge that will connect the west portion of the park to the east to bring it closer together, both portions of the park, without having to have people walk down a set of stairs and crosswalk, and to have faster commute from both sides of the park. Moving over to the east portion of the park, we have pickleball and basketball courts. Pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports in America, and basketball, because who doesn't like playing basketball? We also have bathrooms for all community members to use, which hopefully will attract more people to the park, as well as a dog run, which you can see in the top right of the east portion of the park for people to bring their pets to enjoy. We have created some renderings of the park. The top left photo, you can see the basketball court with bleachers, which would allow basketball events, tournaments, community games to occur, which we hope bring in a lot of people coming to the park to play basketball. The top right photo, you can see pickleball courts with the bathrooms in the background of the photo, the white building with the blue roof, as well as in the top left of that photo, the pedestrian bridge in the background as well. In the bottom photo is the west portion of the park looking southwest. You can see the park with the parking lot in the background. It's kind of tough to see in this specific photo. But ultimately, we are hoping that that plaza on that portion of the park could have cars pull in, food trucks pull in to serve food, and people can enjoy the park on that portion of Lafayette Heights. These are some of the current photos what the park looks like. There is a lot of space, a lot of clearance between the bottom or the current existing ground and the freeway above. As you can see, I'm right there in that photo. I'm like 5'10", so it's quite a bit of space. Looking across, we have put in the parking lot right there, renderings of what it would look like now. And in the other photo is where the basketball court would be with the bleachers looking over to the west portion of the park. For the pedestrian bridge, we are proposing a steel truss bridge that will be 140 feet long, 14 bays, 10 feet by 10 feet, 13 feet wide, plenty of space for people to cross going both ways. We would have elements in the top portion of the bridge for compression, bracing, and concrete abutments on each side of the bridge. And just for simplicity's sake, we designed it to be welded together. But the elements could be brought together with gusset plates or other connection means. Additionally, there is enough clearance for the bridge. Upon an initial look, it doesn't seem like there would be enough clearance for cars to pass underneath and for the bridge to fit underneath the freeway. But using current existing elevation data as well as the historical plans for the bridge, there actually is enough space. The code requires 17.5 feet for pedestrian bridges going over a roadway. Here we have designed it to have 18 feet of clearance, so it does pass that requirement. The bridge will be approximately 10.5 feet tall, which would leave approximately 1.5 feet of space between a girder that goes across the freeway, which is the limiting factor, the freeway arch trusses or arch supports, and the bridge. So there'd be 1.5 feet of clearance. So the bridge would fit underneath the current existing freeway structure. Here's some of the bridge and plans and profiles showing the elements that we would use, some of the HSS beams, as well as the compression elements in the upper portion of the bridge to prevent any break. Additionally, the bridge cross section, we're going to be using a metal deck with concrete over the metal deck welded to beams below. And one of the bridge renderings upon completion looks something like this.
Right, I hope everyone is ready. This is a presentation, so this is going to be very calculus and physics heavy. There's going to be an exam at the end. Okay, I think I'm probably going to be having that reoccurring nightmare for the rest of my life. No, I'd like to take a minute to talk about some of the precedent projects that we had in our designing of this. So first we have the underground ink block, which is located in Boston. This project had a very similar goal to ours, which was to unite communities that were previously separated by infrastructure. Some of the elements that we really loved about this project were the fact that you had the city, you had the public in Boston, you had the FHA all come together, and over 5 years ended up creating a space that ultimately now is under, it's a private company, has a lease agreement with the city, so they administer it. There's a lot of very interesting shops and attractions that not only add value to the space, but the surrounding businesses. This is the Burnside Skate Park in Portland, Oregon. You've probably heard of guerrilla marketing. This was a guerrilla park. It started out with a couple skateboarders and some extra bags of concrete, and they just started building a skate park. They borrowed some concrete from contractors who were building I-84, and it ended up growing into something that the city actually incorporated. It's maintained by volunteers. And interestingly enough, there were two big skate park building contracting companies that had their genesis here. I don't know if any of y'all are from Portland or have ever been to Portland, but previously the Burnside Bridge was the site of illicit activities. Now, however, it's known as one of the skate park meccas of America. The historical Portland walking tour even incorporates this as one of their destinations. We talked about City Walk Birmingham earlier, and we really, really, really loved this project. There's so many different spaces. When we were envisioning what we wanted to do, we tried to mirror some stylistic and functional elements from this park. Particularly, there was a civil rights historical zone, pickleball courts. We looked at having a skate park as well, it's just our site was a little constrained. Some of the design elements that we did choose to incorporate, if you look on the top right, we wanted to have lighting and some aesthetic that creates an atmosphere of safety, friendliness, as well as having artificial turf, landscaping, and other elements like that. And then while our park addresses is one piece of the puzzle when it comes to the barrier the interstate created, we also wanted to zoom out and look at, well, how else can we facilitate more movement between these areas? So we wanted to look at Lafayette Street in particular. So one of the things that has come out of the pandemic, and it's interesting because it happened because of necessity, but it almost feels like it was a natural genesis, which was the pandemic dining situation. Almost ubiquitous across the country, you'll find that restaurants still, even though the pandemic has been winding down, have this arrangement where you can go outside and you can, have friends come over and there's extra space for the restaurants, and it just feels natural. Seasonal streets is a concept that cities are using where they have very high pedestrian traffic. And so you'll have during normal operations, a regular functioning of a street, open to vehicular traffic, and they'll close it off so that more people can come and it can be a safer experience. One of the vignettes in particular is the bottom right. That is King Street in Charleston. And what they do is the second Sunday of every month, they close off the street. And we feel that this could be a great way as either a pilot project or a way to gauge community involvement into how this would work if we were to close off Lafayette. Greenways. As a resident of Nashville, I live in East Nashville, and my favorite place, hands down, is the Shelby Greenway. And I walk there every day, ride my bike, walk the dog. There's different ecology tours that you can go on. It's my sanctuary in the city. And while you don't necessarily have to have a Central Park or a Shelby Bottom size street to have that same effect. And so this is the Hermosa Valley Greenway in Southern California. And two of us have connections with this specific green belt. I used to walk to school along here. I used to meet with my friends, and it's small, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like you're walking in some trail and you're not in the middle of the city. And lastly, we had some sort of previous extravagant examples, but I wanted to show here how with simple paint striping and going into the street, how that creates a completely different atmosphere and takes away that idea that this is solely for cars and opens up the street for pedestrians and other modes of travel. And this leads into pedestrian-centered streets. New York City has been experimenting with some diagonal street closing where they're looking at, instead of it being vehicle central, we have mass transit and we have pedestrians where safety and function and community is focused on. Lastly, in Barcelona, they've had a lot of urban sprawl, and one of the things that they're doing to address this is they're taking these sections of blocks and they are closing it off to through traffic. And what this does is it creates spaces for the people that live there to have your kids play outside by building parks, by having spaces where neighbors can eat dinner together, while still having the utility of the outside streets where people can get through if they want. And this has changed the entire feel of these neighborhoods. And so this is I'm going to show you our concept that we have for Lafayette. And I invite everybody to kind of think about the projects that I've showed you, as well as maybe some that I haven't, and then come along with us. I'd also like to show you that this slide previously, this is all the crash data. So keep this in mind. So here's what we think. You can see our park popped out in the center. We feel that from the Styx traffic circle where 8th Street meets all the way to Charles E. Davis Boulevard, for this being our redesigned Lafayette Street. These are the existing bus stops. So the green portion is more commercial, and we potentially saw either striping or adding more space into the street for some of the restaurants that are down there, some of the businesses that are down there, and have that really be a minimal vehicular traffic area. We wanted to keep the bus routes still there so that people who are taking mass transit can go through, but to really siphon off the amount of traffic that comes through there. And that transition zone where you see the green, that's sort of where we had this idea of incorporating the greenway / open park concept, because it is more of a residential neighborhood. So having that closed off to buses only. And if you could envision with me a place where, you know, people come, your neighbors come for a barbecue, they come to have a picnic, your children can come out and play, as well as having just a place that instead of being for vehicles is for the community. And the last thing I'd like to say is that as I've been working on this project, and I have lived in Nashville for a little while, I have thought many places that I've gone how things would look differently. I know in my own neighborhood, we've talked about maybe closing off the street so that we could have block parties and stuff like that. And so I hope that y'all have found this presentation informative and inspirational. And we'd really like to thank Mary and Drew from Barge. We'd like to thank Joe from the Civic Design Center for their guidance and their wisdom. We'd also like to thank our professor, Lori Troxel, who is our faculty advisor and has been guiding us through the last 4 years and shaping us into engineers that hopefully we can make her proud. Thank you.
Is it questions? That's what it says on the screen. That's true. First of all, thank you all very much. This is exciting. I did not really know what I was walking into, but very glad to see students in our city thinking things like this. I'm a pastor and live a few hundred yards from that underpass, and my church is in the community, in the Napier-Suticum community. We've lived there about 8 years, and I've walked my kids across all of those sidewalks that are not crosswalks for those 8 years, and strollers, and I've run and biked. So it's very, very close to home. A question that I have is, as y'all have thought through a community engagement, the Napier-Suticum community, as you've said multiple times in your presentation, has experienced all the way back from the 50s when the interstates came in and divided what was also a really historical and middle income Black community to today. It just experienced constant people from the outside with great ideas coming in and dictating what happens in the community. Things like renaming areas, you know, can become very fraught. Wedgwood Houston is a historically African-American. It's part of historically Black South Nashville, but it was never called Wedgwood Houston. So how have y'all thought about bringing the historic residents of the neighborhood? So not people living in the new homes, but historic members, which is mostly in that little triangle of the JCUC community. How have y'all thought about bringing in not even just their design elements or needs, but like how they would like to see their community represented in naming or other ways, so that it can feel like it's not new Nashville redictating what this historic community has been like. So that's a big question, but y'all are obviously very smart and capable.
But yeah, absolutely. And that's one of as we see the city grow, I think that's a concern among anybody who's lived here for a while. One of the elements that we really liked about the Birmingham project was that there was such heavy community engagement. And, you know, it's not only some design cues or other elements, but it's also reshaping how that space is viewed, which is important. But I think due to constraints of this being, you know, time constraints and school constraints and stuff like that, we would imagine the bringing the community in as equal designers in this process, 100% throughout the entirety of it.
We also wanted to add in that portion of the park with more grassy areas, landscaping, like sort of an ode and respect, like maybe put in elements that would show some of the history of that community. Maybe like statues, plaques, those sort of elements that could show some of the history and aspects of the community that other people in Nashville might not know about. So if other people on the other side of the freeway are coming, maybe they could learn something about the Sudacom community. Thank you. And I just want to say too, the way you're not only rethinking that one underpass, but the street as it connects. I mean, Lafayette Street, as you said, is very, very busy. We live one block off of it. So I think that's a masterful way to think about it, because it's all connected and people in the community live off of that street that will also be in that underpass. So I want to affirm that. Thanks, guys. The other question.
Hi, Robert Johnson with WeGo Transit. Thank you so much. That was really great. Several years ago, I remember reading lots of articles about air pollution and how the air pollution caused around interstates was particularly damaging, particularly local, and hangs around in the air in close adjacency. And that there was a bit of a double-edged sword with exactly this type of redevelopment, which is that it's in an area where people have been displaced. It is in a low-income area. The users will be low-income users because it's in a place where they originally built it because they were low-income users. So those are going to be the users of the park. So you're deliberately attracting people to come to a park that's in an area of terrible air pollution. And then because it's a park and you're attracting children, those are particularly with people with particularly vulnerable lungs. Can you talk about how you thought about that?
So one, we need to do more environmental studies on how much pollution there actually is in that local community. I personally don't know how much there is, but modeling off the Birmingham walk, clearly it's possible to do developments under freeways. I mean, they have its very successful project, and we believe that using that model, it's possible to do that. I don't agree with your assessment that only low-income users would be using the park. It's designed to bring people on both sides of the freeway. There are a lot of developments in the downtown area, apartments in that area. And really the park is designed to bring people on both sides of the freeway together. Low income, middle income, high income. It's not just a low income park. So I don't agree with your assessment there. But in addition, there are going to be new developments, like we mentioned, potentially on the other side of the freeway. So I guess in conclusion, that the park is really meant to bring people together and not just be an area for low-income people. But I do agree that we would need to do more environmental studies on the current existing pollution factors in that area. I do not have the data right now, but based on the Birmingham walk, it may be a possibility that we could do the projects.
Catherine, I wonder if I can put you on that spot then, given his comments.
Well, I was not involved like with the environmental stuff, but as my understanding is that the interstate was higher, right? So then I guess you're releasing it higher up in the air, so
Okay.
it's not down at the ground level.
Okay.
Where people are.
And we would have to, one of the things that we did look at was, we would have to do soil studies and look at abating lead that's in there's specific, the grassy areas on the either side. That absolutely would have to be looked at.
Yeah, because although we might think perhaps the introduction of electric vehicles would reduce a lot of the particulate emissions, but there'll still be brake dust. And of course, asbestos brakes would have been in use for a very long time. Adjacent to on-ramp and off-ramps, one could assume there would be a lot of asbestos brake dust use since it was built. It's a very good point. Thank you.
This may be more of a question for Catherine as well. Thank you all for your presentation. Great job. We are working on similar projects in Nashville already as far as sort of artistic lighting installations under a TDOT bridge. This is very in the weeds, but one of the main barriers for us is this hasn't really been done in Tennessee that we're aware of. And so I'm curious if you thought through the barriers, or Catherine, your experience in coordinating with AL dots, maybe some words of wisdom.
There was a specialty lighting contractor who was on the project. So that, right, there was specific work done on that. And I know that I mean, this isn't lighting, but you saw the fluted columns that are the backdrop. Luckily, that was an ALDOT standard that was already in the manual that could be used. But right, there was a whole part of the project that was lighting. So it took a lot of conversation, I think, to get to that end product.
It's helpful just to set expectations and normalize the experience of it. Thanks.
I just want to say, I thought that was a great presentation.
Yeah.
All your guys' visuals, the way you delivered it, well thought out and well put together. So good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to give another round of applause to the students. They did such a good job. So I think we're gonna wrap up now. So if you've got any questions, we'll hang out for a minute. But thank you again, everyone, for coming. Representatives from NDOT, TDOT, Parks. Just really appreciate you all. GNRC coming, we go. So thanks again for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.